Coming up on this week's Ask GCN Anything, are aching legs a good thing? How to prepare for an individual time trial? Why is there a discrepancy between the power you can produce on the flat versus climbs? And we've also got some fashion tips from yours truly, which you can of course take with a pinch of salt. As ever, get your questions in for next week's show in the comments section below. To put yourself in with a chance of winning 3 months free subscription to Zwift, use the hashtag AskGCNTraining, or you can use the hashtag talkback on social media for your general cycling related questions. So without further ado, let's get on with the first one this week, which comes in from Ian Povey. I never use a fan when I'm on the turbo. Is this a good idea or am I messing up? Ian, you're kind of messing up, I hate to tell you. When you're on an indoor trainer, even in a cool room with a fan, your core body temperature tends to rise quicker than it does out on the open road, unless it's particularly sweltering outside. So without a fan, your core body temperature is going to be rising rapidly and you're not going to be able to get the most out of yourself on your training sessions indoors. So I would always recommend at least one fan in a room that's as cool as possible for indoor sessions. That said, there is a flip side that I heard recently. Bradley Wiggins was talking about his preparation for the 2011 Vuelta, which was due to be particularly hot. And what he was doing for heat acclimation before he got there was his standard sessions here in the UK, 3, 4, 5 hours out on the road. But as soon as he got back home, he was jumping on the indoor trainer for an hour in a heated room without a fan. Now, by his own admission, he wasn't able to sustain more than about 150 watts, but that really wasn't the point. He was just getting his body used to riding in heat, and apparently it worked. That said, not many of us are getting ready for a big race in extremely hot conditions, so to get the most out of your sessions, try and keep yourself as cool as possible. Now, a couple of years ago, we made a video on various types of indoor training setup. A couple of things might have changed since then, but still a few noteworthy tips in there, so I can recommend that you watch that one now. It's coming up here.
So, what are you going to actually need in order to train indoors? Well, coming up is an overview of what's available to you on the market at the moment, right through from the basic to the very advanced, so you can get the most out of it.
Our next question comes in from Alexi Alexander, and you, Alexi, are the winner of 3 months subscription to Zwift this week, so well done to you. Alexi's question is, I'm about to take part in my first 10k flat time trial in 8 weeks' time. I'm aiming to finish it in around 15 to 17 minutes. What key training sessions should I include in my training plan, and do you have any tips about pacing? PS, I have a power meter and I can train and race very precisely. Welcome to the world of time trialing, Alexi. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it, and 10Ks is a great place to start. Really good that you've got a power meter already, because that is going to help increase the accuracy of both the training and the planning that you make for that training. You've also got the perfect time to prepare. It takes around 6 weeks of training to implement a change in fitness, so when you factor in the taper towards the event itself, 8 weeks is absolutely perfect. We'll get on to the pacing part later on, but to start with, we've got 2 sessions that will help to increase your FTP, which is a key to time trialing performance. Very different sessions, but both very effective nonetheless. The first one is focused on time at and around your FTP, because there's basically no getting around the fact that this sort of session and that sort of effort is the key to improving your FTP. So with this one, you want to get in a good warm-up of at least 15 minutes, and you're then going to be doing 5-minute intervals around your FTP with 1 minute of very easy recovery between each one. The key with these intervals though is that at the beginning of your 5 minutes, you're at around 90% of your FTP, and then you gradually increase the power until at the end of the 5 minutes, you're around 105% of your FTP. Take that 1 minute of easy recovery between each, and your session overall will look like the graph that you see on the screen right now. At the beginning of your 6 weeks training period, I would recommend trying to do 3 of those 5-minute intervals in a single session, but you want to aim to increase that to around 6 intervals by the end of that 6 weeks. The advantage of starting below your FTP and finishing above it is that it's going to get you used to judging your pacing and how the effort feels, which is going to help you on the event itself too. Now, the other proven way to increase your time trialing ability is to use short but very intense efforts, which will raise your VO2 max and also help your aerobic efficiency for your time trial. So session number 2 is focused on that, and you're going to be doing 30-second efforts at 120 to 140% of FTP, very quickly, immediately followed by 15-second rest periods. It's a really hard session, I know, and it's going to be made even harder in just a few moments' time when I tell you an extra little bit. So on the start of each set, which incorporates 10 lots of 30 seconds on and 10 lots of 15 seconds recovery, before you start each set, you are going to do 3 minutes at your functional threshold power, just to add a little bit more lactate before you even get going. As a very potent session, but also a very effective one, so you should see some increases in fitness using that one. Between each of those sets, just take 5 minutes of very easy recovery between each. Now, due to how specific the numbers you're aiming at and the durations are on this session, it's one that's perfect to do on an indoor trainer. And you, Alexa, you can obviously do it on Zwift because you've got your 3-month free subscription now. On top of that, if you've got a smart trainer with ergo mode, you can plug this session into the trainer and then it will make sure that you're at the right power for the right duration, which takes all of the guesswork out of it and means that you don't need to go and find the perfect piece of road to do your intervals. All you need to do is just concentrate on the pain in your legs. Now, in terms of the pacing, well, if it's a flat time trial, as you say, even pacing in terms of power output should be the quickest. What you want to do, though, is look at your historical power data and your power curve. There, you should be able to find your previous personal best for the 16 minutes or so that you think it's going to take you on the day, and that's going to be a really good place to start in terms of what power you should be able to average on the day itself. What I would suggest you do in the last couple of weeks where you're tapering down slightly is go out and do a couple of sessions where you start at that PB for 16 minutes and hold it for 10, 12 or 14 minutes just to see how it feels. If it's feeling quite easy, you can aim for a few percent higher on the day. If you're starting to struggle towards the end of that effort, that is probably a very good place to start. And in the latter half of the time trial event itself, see how much you've got left and give it some welly if you have got any left. Now, we have got a whole video dedicated to pacing a time trial, so I thoroughly recommend that you watch that now. In fact, it should be coming up on the screen right now.
Pacing is absolutely key. Go too hard at the start, we go into the red and pay for it through the rest of the race and have an overall slower time.
Quick fire round now, sometimes known as the slow fire round on GCN. First question from J. Co. I'm going to be deploying to Kuwait for around 10 months soon. Not sure if I can bring or obtain a bike, but there will probably be a stationary cycle, a few machines in the gym. Assuming that's all I get for 10 months, what do you recommend for an effort to keep me as fit as I can manage? I may or may not have internet access. Well, if you do things right, J. Co, you might well find that you come back fitter than you went out. I know plenty of people that work full time that have been confined to an indoor trainer in evenings, etc., and have got really very fit indeed. You can do kind of the same sessions that you would do when you're generally doing your road program, but what you want to make sure is that you cut the volume because it's much more intense, of course, on an indoor trainer. There's no freewheeling, and so you get more work done in a shorter period of time, which can be advantageous. So carry on with your normal style of training and just cut the volume right down. And I think you'll at least maintain the fitness that you've got. Stian Jakobsen, how much faster is a TT bike compared to an aero bike? Well, a lot faster if you take into account the different position it allows you to get in. If you're just comparing the two frames, the difference will be quite minimal. So for example, if you've got an aero road bike and you manage to put some bar extensions on, use the same wheels, the same tyres, the same equipment, and you're in exactly the same position, the difference between that and a full-blown TT bike and the difference in the frame will be very minimal indeed. They will be there, but it won't be particularly much. James Cycle Can. I can hold 270 watts for a 45-minute climb. It's a 7 out of 10 effort, but when I'm out on the flat or 1 to 2% decline, I find it takes 10 out of 10 to hold 250 watts. Is it just a lack of training on the flat? Well, you're not at all alone here, James. There are loads of people that find that they can't put out the same power on the flat as they can on the climbs. There's quite a good reason for this. When you're going up a climb, your bike's constantly trying to decelerate with you on top of it, of course, more so than when you're on the flat. And what it means is that you are pushing against the pedals, or you're putting the power through the pedals at a greater proportion of the overall pedal stroke, which many people find a lot easier to get that power out. It's something that I found as well when I first got a power meter. However, when I found that I had the discrepancy, I wanted to try and increase my power on the flat to match it on the climbs, and eventually I did manage to do that. So it is also something that you can train and improve upon in terms of your power on the flat. Carl Taylor. I've recently done a Grand Fondo which required a lot more effort than I'm accustomed to. Regardless of the fact that I thought I'd been training hard for the past few months, this is the first time I've had a significant amount of soreness a day or so after a ride. Should I, in the future, look for this soreness, as it's been called in the past, as a benchmark of a good training session, or overdoing it? Wow, Carl, I can't believe you've been riding a bike for any period of time, and this is the first time you've had sore legs the day after. It's absolutely nothing to be worried about. You've just pushed yourself hard and you've damaged your muscles and they're aching the next day. The good news is that if you take a day or two of recovery, possibly slightly more than that, your body should adapt to what you've put it through and supercompensate, and you'll get stronger and therefore fitter. So it's no bad thing. And it's also something you might find that you get after a hard training session. Again, no bad thing as long as you factor in enough recovery to allow your body to repair itself and therefore improve. Ed Markey? Dan, please fill in the blank. The one thing all amateur cyclists can do to train like the pros is... Well, it's a similar subject to the previous question, Ed, in some ways. In that blank, I would put rest. Sounds a strange thing because I know resting is not in fact training, but the biggest advantage that pro cyclists that have over amateurs that have jobs and families and everything else is the amount of rest that they get after their training, because that is where the improvements come from. Alejandro Malaya, now that the rainy days are starting in the Seattle area, I have a beginner question of the utmost importance. Socks over leg warmers or vice versa? No, socks very much under leg warmers, 100%. Although do bear in mind that I'm a middle-aged man, and so I may not be at my very height of fashion sense, so take from that what you will. Let us know what you do with your leg warmers and your socks, over or under. Finally, in the quickfire round, birds on a stick. My tyres are 28mm and I've got an inner tube for a 25mm tyre. Is that okay? Yes, absolutely fine. They will be slightly thinner because they'll be pumped up to a greater volume inside, but it should work absolutely fine. Our penultimate question comes in from Jack Ford. As an 18-year-old rider with an interest in starting racing next season, I was wondering what race tactics are and how they work. I hear about it all the time when watching racing, but can't seem to clearly see tactics being used in the peloton. Also, what tactics would be best for different types of riders? Wow, Jack, this is a huge subject because there are some very obvious tactics and some very subtle ones, and they are hard to see on your TV screen when you're just coming into the sport. For you personally starting out racing, you want to firstly think about what type of rider you are. So if you're a sprinter, the common tactic there is just to try and hang in the bunch as long as possible, be a sit-on sprinter, save energy and unleash your devastating amount of power at the end of the race. If you're more of a climber, then you want to utilise that. No point in going on a downhill and trying to attack. Wait for the climb, use your good power to weight ratio and try to go clear solo or with a group of very good climbers to try and keep the sprinters at bay. Now in terms of the pro racing, as I said, there's some very obvious tactics, such as placing a rider into a breakaway so that you don't have to take responsibility for the chasing behind. But there are some much more subtle ones too. So for example, as I record this, Simon Yates of Mitchelton Scott is leading the Vuelta a España. Now one of their tactics in defending might be to allow a rider up the road who's at about 8 to 10 minutes down in the overall classification, because that rider is going to pose a danger and a threat to riders in 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th position on the GC before they pose a threat to Simon Yates. And in turn, when he does pose that threat, it might encourage rival teams to come and help on the front to protect their position on the podium or in the top 5 or whatever that might be. Another tactic which can look very strange on television if you ever see it is if you've got a rider up the road who's looking good for a stage win in a small group perhaps, there's a team behind chasing that have been chasing all day. What you might do is when you get to a climb, and it's around about a 2-minute advantage mark, you go on the attack. Now what that does is makes the team leader from the team that's been chasing follow you, and all the riders that have been doing the chasing for him suddenly think, oh, my job's done for the day, my leader's now taking it into his own hands, and then they go to the back and they go into the gruppetto. And so basically, if you then sit up, that rider has no team personnel left to do the chasing behind. So the initial impact of you attacking will be that the gap comes down so slightly, but then once he can't chase anymore, that gap should then go back up again. There's a whole myriad of different tactics and we should make a separate video on that. One that you can watch now though is this one on how and where to attack. A couple of them tongue-in-cheek, but a couple of them are very viable for your first race. Check it out now.
Attacks can take on many different forms, but in order to execute the perfect attack, whatever form it may take, you need strength, you need timing, you need patience, and you also need cunning.
Final question now, and it comes in from Lawrence Farries. I saw a crash at the Alberta ride to conquer cancer yesterday. Don't know what happened, but it inspired me to several related questions. We're going to answer the first one of those. When one bicyclist's front tyre rubs someone else's back tyre, what actually happens and who likely crashes? And can you prepare for it? Well, it's the person whose front tyre knocks into something that generally hits the deck, and that's because that's where your steering is located. Someone can knock quite heavily into your rear wheel, and in general you'll be able to stay upright because there's no steering located there. It's for the same reason, in fact, why using deep dish wheels in crosswind is fine on the back, but less so on the front, because that's where it affects your steering more. There are different ways to avoid it, the main one being that you hover a little bit further behind the person in front so that your front wheel isn't overlapping their rear wheel. That way, if they suddenly decide to veer across the road for whatever reason, they're not going to wipe the front end of your bike out and you're not going to hit the deck. It's one of the many tips actually that we've given over the years on group riding etiquette here on GCN. This is an old video, but it's a good one, thoroughly worth watching. Plenty of tips for you here, so I'd recommend watching it now.
Now the rule of thumb is treat others the way you want to be treated, and that way you'll remain a respected member of any riding group.
That's the end of this week's Ask GCN Anything. Thank you very much for your company. I look forward to reading your questions in preparation for next week's show, so make sure you get them into the comments section. Don't forget, if you want to get your hands on any GCN merchandise, we've got loads of it, including this sweater, over on shop.globalcyclingnetwork.com. If you've enjoyed this video, I would very much appreciate you giving me a thumbs up down below, if that doesn't sound too rude. Coming up next though, a video on how to show off, in effect. It comes from Chris Opie, and it is 5 car park tricks, which he teaches you how to do. You can find it just down here.